Hi, Peggy, or should I say Dr. Peggy DeLong. Thank you
Thank you
so
for having me.
much for now.
Thank you.
You're coming from New Jersey, right?
Yes.
All the way from New Jersey. So those of you who are watching, uh, Dr. Peggy DeLong is a clinical psychologist, and she's written a book published by Peacock Proud Press entitled I Can See Clearly Now, a memoir about love, grief, and gratitude. And I want to just mention a couple of things about Dr. DeLong, who I refer to as Peggy, so I'm going to do that during this
Please.
interview. She's a clinical and a forensic psychologist with a private practice in New Jersey, Long Valley. She assists individuals and groups to foster gratitude and cultivate joy in everyday living. In fact, she calls herself the gratitude psychologist because she's seen in her own practice and in her own life how gratitude can actually make a difference for people to deal with difficult circumstances, grief, and loss. And Peggy has early in her life and throughout her life, as all of us adults do, experience some very difficult losses. And that's the loss that she recounts in her memoir. And she's working on her second book now, and I'm really excited to be publishing that book as well. And I'll have her talk about that. But she's an accomplished psychologist, an entrepreneur, speaker, and author. And she feels passionate about bringing people together and helping them live their best lives. I wanted to interview Peggy today because we've been talking, especially during this coronavirus global pandemic, about the value of writing to help us deal with difficult circumstances. And because of my work with another doctor, Dr. Robin McAvoy, she let me know about James W. Pennebaker's work. And I've just recently gotten two of his books, which Peggy told me about, in addition to his first book, which Dr. Robin told me about. So I want to talk with Peggy today about two things. One, expressive writing and that method and how it helps people deal with challenges like the global pandemic we're dealing with. And then talk with Peggy just about her own writing experiences. So Peggy, can we talk first about expressive writing and how you've used writing or asked your clients to use writing to help them deal with things like this global pandemic?
Certainly. First of all of the research shows that when we put our thoughts and our emotions down on paper, it is one way to help us process them and to release them. It sort of diminishes their power and the hold that they can take on us. And this is so important now more than ever when we do not have access to people who normally might get us through difficult times, to get together with a friend for a cup of coffee and just talk about how life is going. We can't do that other than through video technology. We can't get together with the people that we're used to who provide us with support. So writing is one outlet that I've used since I was in second grade when I got my very first diary, and just stuck with it and have written in a journal my entire life. But as a psychologist, it's really important to me that I help my clients with things that are backed by research. I don't want to waste anybody's time. These are all research-backed, science-based methods that we truly are altering our brain structure when we write. And it can be used in a couple different ways. One way is to write and process what might be called the negative emotions. And I don't like to use the term negative. I truly believe that all emotions are valid and are here to teach us something. They're not necessarily, I don't like to put that negative connotation. It might be undesirable. It might be uncomfortable. But those are what we want to write about to help us process them and diminish their intensity, their power, simply by writing about that. And the more emotional, the better. So one study found that when people wrote about neutral things, they didn't have as a positive release as people who wrote intensely about their emotions. So as comfortable as you can get, write about your emotions.
Peggy, can I interrupt you for just a second?
Certainly.
Because I'm thinking about an emotion that I feel like, oh, I'm not supposed to have, or that would be negative, would be, for example, anger, especially as a woman. I'm not supposed to be angry. So what you're suggesting is that those emotions of anger, resentment, um, even grief, like, why don't you just get over this? Those are what you're saying are the emotions that help writing. When you write, it helps diminish their power if you write about
Ex-
them.
Exactly. And it helps to process them. And then it helps you to acknowledge them and have some self-compassion, and then begin to release it and release the hold that it takes on you. Psychologists talk about some of our thoughts as being cognitive distortions, and really that what that means, it's just a falsehood. So
Mm,
you might feel like you're full of anger, but you're not. That's not what you portray to the world. And when you write it, it helps to highlight how it really is in contrast of who you are, that it's a cognitive distortion that you hold within your mind. So writing is a one way to help us be more aware of those cognitive distortions that really affect our mood and bring us down. So that's one way to use writing, more in a processing of some painful emotions. And I always recommend that when people do this, it can be very intense at times. So to always have something positive to look forward to after you've had a writing session.
mm.
So engage in something that feels good to help you not get stuck in that uncomfortable feeling. It's great to process, but you want to have something to look forward to when you're finished.
Right.
But writing can also be used in a positive way to generate positivity. You can actively choose to write about positive feelings. And one thing that I work with in my clients in my monthly membership program, it's called Come Alive with Dr. Peggy. One of our writing exercises is to focus on positivity using the acronym AWESOME. So anytime that you find that you have done something related to the word awesome, so A stands for achievement, W, wisdom, E, excellence, S, strength, O, optimism, M, motivation, and E, empathy. So to think about any time that you have portrayed any of those characteristics and write about it,
Mm.
because then it shows you how you are able to generate positivity, a positive feeling through your thoughts. And all of this is based in cognitive psychology, that our thoughts generate our emotions and our behavior. And the really great thing is that we have the power to choose our thoughts. And writing is one way to help us be more aware of what those thoughts are. So many thoughts that we have are stuck in our subconscious, but when we write about them, it helps them bring them into our awareness and helps us release the ones that are not serving us.
Got it. And I know I have shared in the Right Now group a blog about how when you actually have something to offer people, because many people write about very difficult circumstances, domestic abuse, sexual abuse, violence that they've experienced, uh, cancer diagnoses and how they went through those. Sometimes they have to actually write what is called a hurting draft. This is what the blog calls. It's a private draft. And I talk about your first draft is really a private draft of writing where you just get it all out. Then this author talks about writing a healing draft. And then the third one is the helping draft, meaning that's the draft that you're actually going to publish to the world. But the hurting draft might be a private, the healing might be in a workshopping setting where you are with trusting people that can hear what you have to say and give you positive feedback. What do you think about that process? And have you followed anything like that in your own life?
Well, that is essentially what my memoir is. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because
Mhm,
I didn't conceptualize it that way, but that's truly what I did. I
mhm,
started with a journal. It's behind me.
mhm.
This green journal is from 1994, and in it are all of my writings from when my fiance was going through his cancer treatment. And all of this was relatively private. I'm sorry, not private, because I had to leave this behind in public areas if I was called to meet with a doctor. I never know who was going to find this. So this was relatively private. And then when I decided that I wanted to turn it into a published memoir, I did just that. I mean, my memoir is quite private and personal,
Mhm.
but I took some parts out and made it more the things that I felt would be helpful for people to read. And then as a psychologist, had a little bit of a spin of healing woven through it, messages and things that helped me get through that time when he was ill and after his passing, and then subsequently after my father's passing. What I learned, I would weave in what helped me. But then even the writing process 25 years later was therapeutic. Being able to revisit those times in my life, the whole writing process as it was happening was healing. And then looking back upon it, and the whole publication of my memoir was a healing experience for me, and working with you.
That's awesome. And will you then talk now a little bit about your writing process and your writing habits? Where do you like to write? What do you do to help you get your writing finished? Even what might get in the way of you writing, because we all have to deal with our resistance to that, so
Yes.
that you actually are going to finish the second book. So tell us a little bit about your writing process and your writing habits, Peggy.
And this is specific for me, but I needed large chunks of time. I knew that in order for me to sit down and work on it, I needed to know that I would not be interrupted for 2 or 3 hours. That was just the mindset that I needed to go into it. And then sometimes I needed a day or two. When I was finally ready to put the finishing touches on it, I needed 2 days to get away. So with my family's permission, my husband held down the fort at home. I went away and got it done. I need to be surrounded by some creativity. Sometimes music helps me, or looking at old photographs to help me get into the emotion of the time that I'm writing about. That all helps me with the creative process. But other times I would need to make an appointment with myself in my calendar, cross out a chunk of time, and nothing could get scheduled then. This was for me to do what I needed to do to get the books done.
So what kind of technologies do you use to write with? Do you do any voice recording? Do you do anything like I'm doing on my notepad, or is it mostly computer work? I know you're journaling, but what's kind of the technology that you use to write with?
It's pretty simple with me. It's just a journal and my computer. That's it. I prefer handwriting my thoughts and then organizing it on paper. And then once it's organized, then I type it into the computer. And then as I'm going, because I'm publishing in my next book is a lot of research behind every claim that I'm making. I would find it very helpful to write out notes about what I would find in a research article on paper. I couldn't type it because I was using the internet, and I couldn't simultaneously use the internet and then go to a Word document and type. I would write it all freehand. And there's a lot of research behind the power of using our hand to write. And helping it get into our memory and just bring it more powerful when we actually use our hand. Other people prefer to type right into the computer, but I experience that personally, what they talk about in the research when I use my hand to write.
That's great. Another thing that I know about you, Peggy, that you haven't necessarily mentioned, and what I appreciate about what you just said too, is that this is particular to me. We all have our own writing processes and habits. When I work with clients, I actually invite them to, identify how they have done writing in the past, and then to try out some new techniques and habits. But often what's worked for you works for you, and you need to play with that. And one of the things that I know works for you, because you love to be out in nature, your family was skiers, and I recall when you were writing this book, I can see clearly now, which actually has snowflakes as a little touch of graphic design and wonderful, and these are mountains, that you actually went off to a ski lodge, as I recall, to kind of finish, or that you go out in nature, because it's one of the things that you also know is that nature heals people.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, when we connect, the research also shows that when we connect with nature, that helps with our creativity. And everybody connects with something different. It might be a beach or a babbling brook or a mountain. For me, it's the mountains. So I would find places where I could either see or be near a mountain, and babbling brooks. That really is soothing. And I would go with a notepad and just sit on a rock and just be inspired by some thoughts that came to me, or help me do some editing. I would sometimes bring my laptop to a spot if I needed to just edit. Those were very helpful for me. I feel most at peace when I'm out in nature, and that helped me get some of my writing done.
I think that's also one way to reward yourself for writing. And I think that's an important thing to do as you're writing something, especially like a book. You should have rewards for yourself, celebrations along the way for the process, and not wait until the book is actually completed.
Absolutely, because it is a long process.
Yeah.
And and I always tell people, it doesn't really, I mean, it was something I had worked on for 25 years. It took me that long from
The
writing
first book.
yes, the second one much quicker once
Yeah.
I found you.
Yeah.
But that first one took me that long. But I always tell people, it doesn't matter how long. It's the process itself is wonderful and to be celebrated every step of the way.
So what would you say are a couple of the biggest benefits that you've gotten from actually becoming a published author? I mean, you're a clinical psychologist, you have the degrees and the credibility to do what you do, but what has been the benefit of actually publishing your book?
Tremendous. It has opened doors that I didn't even know existed. I've been speaking about gratitude for about 6 years on public speaking, and once the book came out, it whether it's SEO, search engine optimization, working on the internet, lots of people found me and invited me to things that I just didn't even know existed. For example, I was invited to do a house tour where every location there was a special guest, and I was one of the guests. Um,
Oh,
Selling books and talking about my book to probably 200 people came by that day.
wow.
Another opportunity was to do World Gratitude Summit with Jack Canfield, one of my online mentors, author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. Somebody found me through my work with gratitude and it being a word in the title of my book. And I did this worldwide online summit with Jack Canfield and other well-known people in the field of gratitude.
So
Just
that
things
wouldn't have happened had you not
that
published the book.
that never would have happened.
Yeah.
And now with my speaking engagements, I also now I have something that I can sell. In addition to what I might be paid to actually speak, I have people. It's a nice segue. People really like to have something tangible after they leave something where they feel inspired. So I have been so grateful to have something that people can take away after I speak.
Which reminds me that I think one of the innovative things that you do, Peggy, is sell bracelets, gratitude bracelets, or different types of bracelets, along with your book. And do you have one of your bracelets on? Can you show
I'm
people?
always wearing my gratitude bracelets
Uh-huh.
because as people read in my book, I discovered the power of gratitude in 1994. And
Mhm.
in my 18 years of being a psychologist, I have never come across anything as powerful, as accessible, and effective. And it's free, and we can do it anytime as practicing gratitude. So my bracelet, it really is that every time people look at wear it and look at the center metal bead, it's just a quick reminder to stop what you're doing, think about one thing that you're grateful for. All the research shows that the more we practice gratitude, the happier lives we live. We are truly forming new neural pathways in our brains by practicing gratitude. So writing the book has increased my bracelet sales. So I
Mm.
also sell the bracelets when I do a talk about gratitude.
And you
And
actually create those bracelets, right? They're
yes,
your
yes,
designs.
yes, I make them all. And I started that company about 10 years ago because after I would write in my field of child abuse and neglect. It was very therapeutic for me to do some beading afterwards to help me get to sleep. And then I was just addicted to beading and turned it into a bracelet company,
Yeah.
with the most popular one being the gratitude bracelet.
Yeah,
So I
that's
often so I often suggest to people, to authors, to have something in addition to the book that they can sell, another product that might be related to the book. It's a wonderful way to package things. I have a gratitude box that I send people. It includes my my
whoop. Well, we lost Peggy. Let me see if I can get her back. Okay, Peggy's back. So you were talking about the value of selling more than just your book, even your bracelets, and that you've got a lot of benefit from that.
Yes, I think if somebody has a book and also a product, to find a way to connect them, because what I've been doing is also selling gratitude boxes or packages where it includes my bracelet, the gratitude bracelet. I have gratitude stones and my memoir, all related to gratitude. So I ship those out, and I also always have them available when I do public speaking.
That's awesome. I think it's so innovative and entrepreneurial of you, and I admire it a lot. It makes me think how I could help my authors in other ways to bring in, diversify their income stream. So, and also help people, make a difference for people. So, just to wrap this up, Peggy, if you were to talk with a person who had not yet written a book, what would you say you wish you would have known? Just a couple of things before authoring your book. What would be a couple of parting advices that you would give them?
I would say to go with your heart and follow where your heart brings you. I had been given some advice along the way not to write a memoir. So, a couple people said that people aren't interested in reading memoirs if you're not
Mm,
famous. Well, that is not true. Simply not true. So I would say if you want to publish a book about your life, and the healing that comes along with writing that is tremendous. So pick something that is very meaningful for you, because it takes a lot of time and energy and effort. So you want to enjoy the process. And it's easier to enjoy that when you're writing about something that really speaks to you. Follow your heart. And my next would be not to let obstacles bring you down, whether that is a bookstore that's not interested in carrying your book, or someone who's not interested in having you speak. I like to look at rejection as just a way of opening up another door for what is really meant in your path.
that's awesome. And that can be true for getting the book written too. You need to put accountability structures and support, and you need to not let anything stop you. You need to be being unstoppable to actually finish a book.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Dr. DeLong, Peggy to me, thank you so much for your valuable time and valuable advice. I think people are really going to benefit from this interview and our conversation together. And thank you for all that you're doing out in the world to help people, especially at this time, but at all times. And I really want to recommend people read your memoir. Memoir is actually my favorite genre, and I have benefited from reading hundreds, probably thousands of memoirs of both famous and not famous people, but it's important for us to share our stories for one another and for the world.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you, Laura.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Peggy.
Bye.